Hi everyone, it's time for A Night Divided, Chapter 24. If you live among wolves, you have to act like a wolf. Nikita Khrushchev, Soviet Union Premier, 1958 to 1964. I didn't tell Fritz my plan. Not only would he have accused me of every kind of stupidity, but he also would have been right to do it. However, he couldn't feel the aches in my body every night after hauling up those buckets. It wasn't just my arms and shoulders. Every part of me was exhausted and sore. Each morning, I started more tired and ended more drained. I was carrying lighter loads than when we first began, and fewer of them. If something didn't change by the end of the week, Fritz would be doing all the work while I was sat aside, useless as the growing piles of dirt. Police regularly patrolled the streets after curfew, but as young as I was, if they caught me, probably the worst thing to happen would be a ride home in their car with a slapped hand and another page for my file. Probably. Unless I had already stolen the pulley by then, which would be impossible to explain. It would be reported to the Stasi. Who would wonder what a 12-year-old girl wanted with such a tool. They would find the tunnel, and we had gone too far for me to pretend Fritz hadn't been involved. So it was decided I couldn't get caught. It was very early on a rainy Saturday morning when I snuck out of the apartment. My plan was to get the pulley before anyone else was allowed outside and to be on my way home immediately after curfew was lifted. That way I only had to sneak around in one direction. I wore my blandest clothes, which really only required a choice between communist gray and communist grayer. That would camouflage me against the walls in the early morning light. I also brought a small burlap sack and our sharpest kitchen knife. Almost as soon as I got onto the street, a Trembot Kubel drove by, full of police, and I backed into the shadows of our doorway. The officers' rifles reflected from the streetlights, and their shared laughter was coarse and louder than it ought to be for this early hour. Louder than it ever ought to be, actually. I wondered what men like them might find funny. Probably we had a different sense of humor because nothing about our police force ever made me smile. For several long minutes, after they'd left, I fought against my instinct to go back inside. That would have been the smart thing to do. Then I reminded myself that tunneling beneath the death strip was hardly a smart act, so at least I was being consistent. After they could no longer be heard, I made myself take the first step onto the sidewalk, and after that I was committed. The streets were quieter than I'd ever seen them, and it felt as though the entire city had been abandoned. This was probably what my neighborhood would have become if the Berlin Wall hadn't gone up. We would have left, and Herr Kraus too. A family who lived below us also had plans to leave. I was sure there were others. Eventually, the whole city would have emptied out, except for the most loyal party officials and the Stasi and Grenzer officers. Or what did I know? Maybe they would have left too, given the chance. Russia's new first secretary, Brezhnev, would have rolled through here on a tour from Moscow and found he was the leader of a vast country of empty buildings and overgrown farmland. I balled up my courage and my fists along with it, rounding the safety of the corner while keeping as close to the shadow covers as possible. I saw nobody, heard nobody, and as far as I could tell, I was completely alone out here. The next part of my walk was the most dangerous. I had to dart across a street that was usually quite busy in the daytime. The rain would help, but it wasn't falling hard enough for a dull, full camouflage, and even at full sprint, it would take me 2 or 3 seconds to cross the wide street. I stayed hidden at the corner for several minutes, steeling my nerves. Even through the heavy clouds, the sky was already growing lighter. I had to run. If I didn't go now, the curfew would end and I would be stuck here with no hope of getting that pulley. I refused to haul dirt buckets up that ladder again, not when a much better option was within my reach. That signal thought was enough to prompt me into moving. I gave one last look in every direction and then ran like I had never before. I was blind to everything but the corner in front of me and the protection it would offer. My feet were light upon the street, and I jumped to the curb so there would be no chance of tripping. Then I lunged for the cove in the nearest building as if fire was at my heels. I landed in there and almost screamed. A woman was already using the same cove to hide and looked as startled to see me as I was her. Her silky long hair was as dark as her sleek outfit, but pulled behind her in a fashion more elegant than I usually saw. She was beautiful, but had clearly tried to play it down by wearing only a bare amount of makeup. I felt clumsy in playing beside her, and would have left right away if I had anywhere better to go. Her face softened as she looked at me. "I know you. Aldous Lowe's daughter, right?" It bothered me that she should know that, especially since I was certain I did not know her. She only smiled and said, "Looks like you're no better at staying out of trouble than he was. But your father was a very inspirational man. He meant a lot to those of us who want to see things changed here in the East." She spoke of him like he was dead, the same way my mother often did, something I always resented, and she hadn't told me anything about herself. Getting no reaction from me, the woman said, "It's not safe to be out here this time of night." She reached into her pocket and pulled out 5 Ostmarks. "Could you use this?" Frankly, I was so relieved that she didn't demand a bribe of silence from me, I barely even thought about the fact that I was the one receiving the bribe. She smiled when I nodded and pressed the money into my hand, then added, "Shall we agree not to have seen each other then?" "Agreed," I mumbled, and she ran off the way I had just come. While I darted in the other direction, my mind burned with curiosity for who that woman was and how she knew my father, but there was a much stronger urge for me to get that pulley. The sun was rising fast. I didn't have much time. About 15 minutes later, I reached the neighborhood with the pulley. Since it was a weekend, several of the stores would be closed today, and I had some time before the rest opened. Many of the residents here would have already left for the countryside, drowning their troubles in a bottle of Pilsner. I hoped those who remained were sleeping in late. I breathed a little easier once I was in the lot with the damaged building. There were plenty of places to hide, and based on the scattered garbage I passed, other people had hidden here before me. I had to stack a couple of cinder blocks on their ends to stand high enough to reach the pulley, but after checking the area carefully to be sure I was still alone, I reached up with my knife, sawed off the ropes, and let the pulley drop to the ground. I jumped down, hid in my burlap sack, and crouched behind the rubble in the lot until the first signs of traffic grew around me. It was an easy walk home, but as soon as I rounded the last corner, I saw Fritz waiting for me on the street. His face was nearly purple, and his breaths were harsh and shallow. He grabbed my shirt collar and yanked me inside the apartment building and then twisted me around. "What were you thinking?" he hissed. My chest tightened as I got ready for the argument that clearly was coming. I had known he'd be angry when he learned I was gone, especially that I went alone. But my reasons were good. If he wanted to fight about this, we would, but I would win. "We needed something, and I got it," I said. "Nothing is worth what you did. How dare you, Gerda?" I started to retort, but quickly lost any interest in arguing. Now that I really looked at him, it wasn't anger in his eyes, it was fear, more than I'd ever seen in my brother before. I opened the burlap sack just enough for him to see what was inside, and when I did, he nodded, and tears streamed down his cheeks. He grabbed me into a hug, his stiff fingers digging into my back to communicate the words still trapped inside him. He whispered, "That was so stupid to count as bravery. What if we lost you? Never do that again, Gerda. Never do anything like that again." I gave him an apology, but only for making him so afraid. I could never regret what I'd done, because now we had a pulley.